Hello everyone and welcome to our presentation. Today, Group 7 will be introducing Playwright, a modern automation tool used for black box web testing. Playwright allows us to test websites the same way a real person uses them, by clicking, typing, navigating, and checking if things work correctly. This tool fits perfectly into what we've been learning in CSC 455 about software quality assurance, especially topics like functional testing, system testing, equivalent classes, boundary value, and decisions rule. Is the main reason we are here today is to show you what Playwright is, why it's useful, and how to install it, and the core feature that make it one of the most powerful testing tools available. What is Playwright? Playwright is a modern end-to-end testing framework built by Microsoft. It is designed to automate real browser actions, things like opening a website, clicking a button, typing in text field, and verify what appears on the screen. Playwright is considered a black box testing tool because we don't need to know anything about the internal code. We only care about what the user sees and how the website behaves. With the experience I have used in Playwright, one of the biggest strengths is that it supports all major browsers. Chromium, like Chrome and Edge, Firefox, WebKit, like Safari. So Playwright is also very fast and reliable because it has auto rating, which means it waits for the page to load and for elements to appear before interacting with them. And finally, it includes a built-in test runner and trace debugger, which makes testing and debugging easy. Black box testing. Why? Why do we want a tool like Playwright? Well, Playwright tests from the user point of view, as mentioned. It doesn't care about source code. It only cares about input and output, which is exactly what black box testing is. Playwright checks if the website behaves correctly when user press the button, enter a text, submit form, and navigate between pages. This connects perfectly with the topics we learn and discuss, including equivalence class, partitioning, boundary value analysis, decision tables, system testing approaches. Instead of doing all these tests manually, Playwright automates everything for us consistently, quickly, and the best part, accurately. Now, Playwright versus others. Here is a comparison between Playwright, Selenium, and Cypress. Cross-browser. Selenium supports everything. Cypress supports only Chromium and limited Firefox. Playwright supports Chromium, Firefox, and WebKit, which give us full coverage, as mentioned before. When it comes to auto waiting, Playwright automatically waits for element to load, which reduces flaky tests. Selenium requires manually writing wait. Cypress also auto wait, but Playwright engine is more reliable. Next we have parallel tests. When it comes to parallel tests, Playwright supports parallel testing right out of the box. Selenium requires extra configurations. Cypress supports parallelisms only partially or with paid features. When it comes to test runner, Playwright has a built-in runner and debugging UI. Selenium needs additional framework like TestNG or JUnit. Cypress has a runner but limited browser options. So, lastly, we have the API and UI test. Well, again, Playwright can test both API and user interface together. That's amazing. While the others are more limited. Overall, Playwright combines the best feature from both Selenium and Cypress into one tool. Okay, installation and setup. If we go back, I put a link there. If you go to that link, let's click on that link. That link will open, yes, that link open a page, installation page for Playwright. Let's verify something really quick. Type reliable end-to-end testing for modern web. So if you click that, now you can see, as I said to you, you can see all those web apps that Playwright is reliable with, so which is fantastic, and we use those every day. Now let's go through the installation step by step. How you're gonna install Playwright and how to run it up. So let's go and do that. So to install Playwright, open your terminal or command prompt. Open your terminal and command prompt. So I'm gonna open my terminal like Windows R to bring this and type CMD so you can open terminal. So okay, now to install Playwright, type npm init Playwright at latest, just like we see there. You can choose JavaScript if you want the simplest options, or TypeScript if you prefer more structure. But for this one, let's use the simplest option. I'm going to use JavaScript. Let's do JavaScript. Where should your test be located? When you first installing it, Playwright suggests a folder called test, not E2E. But I already had Playwright on my computer, so I just uninstall it so to show you that. So right now let's call that folder. We're gonna call that folder CSC 455 G7, right? G7, and press enter. Now the question is how to GitHub action workflow. Playwright is asking, do you want me to set up automatic cloud testing on GitHub? Well, if you aren't using CL, choose no. If you want automative later, you can choose yes. But I'm gonna choose yes because I want automative later. Install Playwright once here. So as you can see there, it said config.js already exists, override it. Yes, because as mentioned, I already done it. I used that Playwright before, so I'm going to press yes to override it, but yours will not be like that if you never done it before. Now we have Playwright into a computer. Now let's say, okay, how do we know if it's really there? We're gonna type that comment to see the second comment in your screen, npx Playwright test. Yes, we do have Playwright into a computer. If you want to open that beautiful Playwright test runner UI, so we have to use the last comment that I put on that screen, which is npx Playwright test UI. When we open the UI, the user interface, you can see that Playwright create a test folder where you're gonna see a example and has a title and get started link. So let's click on those. You're gonna see this. There we go. And has a title, and there we go. So this is perfect. First requirement, to use Playwright, there are only a few simple requirements. First, you need Node.js because Playwright is built on top of JavaScript. Second, it's recommended to use Visual Studio Code because VS Code has great extension and makes writing tests easier, and I love VS Code. Final requirement, Playwright automatically install all major browsers for you. You don't need to worry about downloading Chrome, Firefox, or WebKit manually. With all these requirements in place, you are ready to start writing and running tests.
Okay, so now we're going to get to the next part of the video. So I'm going to take you from installation to writing automated testing using a custom practice website designed specifically for Playwright. We'll cover running tests, debugging, writing UI tests, interacting with buttons, forms, drop-downs, dynamic content, and even iframes. Okay, with that being said, let's get started. So right now I have VS Code open, and we have this sample project that we're going to use to test with Playwright. Alright, so first thing first, we're going to go to the Playwright documentation, and we're going to install Playwright with npm. So we're going to go ahead and install Playwright. Okay, now it's going to ask you if you want to use TypeScript or JavaScript. We're going to use JavaScript since the goal of this video is for you to learn Playwright, not focus on TypeScript. So you just keep it simple. And now it's going to ask where we want to put our end-to-end tests. For right now, it's fine for us to use the default test folder that Playwright will create. So you can go ahead and press enter. It's going to ask you want to add a GitHub Actions workflow. We're not going to be doing that, so you can click no. And it's going to ask if you want to install Playwright browsers, which is essentially a plugin that opens up a report on your browser that you can go through and see the execution of all your tests. So for that, we're going to go ahead and click yes and get that. So it's going to go ahead and install that. And you see it's going to create a node modules folder, some other packaging for Playwright. But the most important thing is going to be this test folder right here. This test folder is going to have all of our tests that we're going to use to test this website. Alrighty. So with that being said, I'm first going to open up our testing site that we're going to use for demonstration. We're going to open this with live server. If you don't have that, you can go up here to your extensions and you'll see a live server on your extension. Go ahead and install that, and that'll allow you to just open up the demo website or any website that you want to test on. So we're going to go ahead and open up that with live server, and this is the site. Right, you see we have a login form, a counter button, a select the country field, dynamic text loading, iframe test, and a file upload. So in this video, we're going to test most of these different sections so you can get a good feel on how to use Playwright. Alrighty. So with that being said, we're going to write our first test. So we're going to go to our test folder, and then we're going to create a file. We're going to call it basic.spec.js. That's going to be the name of our file, and you might be asking why I named it this. Playwright convention is to name the test, write the name of the test, right being the prefix, and then the suffix being spec.js. Basically, so Playwright can parse your file structure and run the test. Alrighty, so with that being said, we're going to write our first test. We're going to import a couple objects, and these objects you're going to use for every test you write with Playwright. These are pretty important. So we're going to import test and expect from Playwright.test. So test is basically an object that, or a function that runs your test, and expect is another function that essentially validates, right, the test and make sure it does the correct action. We'll see more of that into the demo. So first thing first, let's go ahead and write a test for the home page just to make sure it loads, right? When we go to the home page, we want to make sure, hey, if a user navigates to this page, that it loads correctly. So we're going to go ahead and test that. So the first thing that test takes as a parameter or argument is the description of the test. And you'll usually see this when you run the test. It'll show it in the terminal and also in the report that Playwright generates. So we're going to call this test homepage loads. And then the second parameter it takes is an async function. And this async function is basically going to run the testing logic. It takes in the page, which is an object that Playwright provides. So we're going to go ahead and take that. And now we're going to go ahead and have our testing logic. So first thing first, we're going to await a page.goTo. And this is essentially going to go to this page right here that allows Playwright to go to the page and run the test. So it's going to take that as a string, and it's also going to take battery on it, but it's also going to take a await page, await expect, which is the function I was talking about earlier. This is going to perform the logic, right? Because we're trying to validate that the test is going to run the correct behavior. So we're going to say expect page dot locator h1. So that's where we're going to be locating, and we're going to say we expect when that page load that h1 tag in the HTML, we're going to expect that to contain text Playwright automated testing. Right, we're going to expect that to be in the h1 tag. Practice site. So we're going to expect that to be in HTML. So now that we have that, and you can see that running, we're going to go ahead and run the test so you can see the actual how Playwright actually runs the test. So we're going to go ahead and run npx Playwright test. And essentially what this command is doing is basically going to our test folder and running all the tests in this folder. That's essentially what it's doing. So we're going to go ahead and run that. And you see it's going to go ahead and run that test across all browsers. You're going to go ahead and see that the tests have ran, and they ran successfully on Chrome, Firefox, and WebKit. WebKit is like that basically because WebKit's depreciated, and that's not really the main focus of the video. But we do see that, hey, our test homepage loads right here ran successfully on Firefox, and it also ran successfully on Chrome. We can go ahead and get into more detail of the test if we go to Chrome, and we can see a little bit what Playwright is doing behind the scenes. But we do see, hey, our test worked. So we can go ahead and get out of that, and we can go back and run another test. So we're going to go ahead and run another test. We're going to call this test validate login flow. And again, it's going to take an async function. And this function is going to take in the page. Right, like normal. And we're going to go ahead and go and copy this so we don't have to rewrite this. But essentially, in all your tests, you're going to have to go to the page that you want to test. And we're going to do that, and then we're going to await page.fill. So these are going to be some new functions that we're using. The fill function on this page object essentially just fills in like the HTML elements on the page. So we're going to go to the username field. right, in HTML that has an ID of username. And it's going to have, we're going to fill it with admin as a value. And we're basically going to do that one more time. This time we're going to do it with the password. With the password field, and we're going to fill that with password. Alrighty. And now we're going to simulate a page click. So page.click. And this time we're going to say log in button. Alright, so we're going to click the login button. Right, so these are the actions essentially that we're taking in our test. You see all these tests usually follow a similar structure. We're going to go to the page, we're going to perform some actions on the page, and then we're going to check the end state that all those actions are supposed to be in. Right, so we're going to expect that after all those actions that we take, that the state that our page should be in, it's going to be in this expect function. So we're going to say expect page.locator. We're going to locate the login button or the login status. We're going to go there and we're going to say we expect it to have text log in successful. So we're going to expect it to have that text. So we're going to go ahead and run this test again. We can go ahead and go to the terminal. We can Control-C to get rid of that. Go ahead and clear the terminal. And we can run the test again. MPX playwright test. So that's going to go ahead and run. And while that's running, you're going to go ahead and see, hey, all these tests are running. And as you see, it's going to generate another report for us that we can see in the browser. So the test that we just wrote, you can see validate login flow, right, in the basic.spec.js file. We can see that, hey, this test ran successfully in Chrome and Firefox. As I said before, it's a reason why these tests aren't running in WebKit. That's due to WebKit being depreciated. There's ways we can make that pass successfully, but for the most part, that doesn't really matter. We're really focused on Chrome and Firefox. But we do see, hey, our test validate login flow has ran successfully. Alrighty. So now we can run another test of testing our counter and making sure, hey, our counter does increment correctly. And it shows that in the state of the web page. So this time, we've normally been writing the tests right in the same file, but you're also able to run tests one test at a time, right? Because when we run the MPX playwright test, it's running all these tests in this test folder. But sometimes we might not want to do that, and we may want to provide more modular code for our test. So in the future, we can go back to those tests and easily read them and update them. So for that, we can just create a separate test for this counter. For this one, we're going to go to a file, and we're going to say, we can just call this counter .spec.js. Alright, we can create that. And now this time we can write a test in this file, separate from those other tests. So we can say test counter increments, and then again we'll pass in our async function as we have been doing before. We're just going to take in the page object, as we normally have been doing. And this time, again, as we've been doing before, like I said, these tests get kind of repetitive because you're always going to have to do these things. You're going to have to go to the page. We're going to go ahead and copy our URL that we're testing, and we're going to go ahead and paste that. And now we're going to say await page.click because we want to simulate the clicking of that button in that HTML document. So we're going to say await page.click. Again, we're going to select the element with the counter button. So we're going to select that and click it. And we're going to go ahead and click that one more time. So we can go ahead and copy that because we want to do 2 clicks, and we expect the state after performing those actions. We expect it to be 2. So we're going to go ahead and do that. So we're going to say await expect. Again, we have to locate that element in the HTML. So we're going to say expect locator. We're going to locate that counter button or counter value, which is basically the value that it should be. So we're going to say counter value, and we expect that counter value to have text of 2, right? Because we click the button twice, and we expect the state of the page to be in 2. And we also do have to import, since this is a separate file, we have to import those functions again. So test and expect from playwright test. So we can go ahead and do that. And this time, since we want to run the test separately, we can say, as we've been doing before, mpx playwright, but this time we're going to say test, and then we're going to go to the that file. So we're going to say basic counter.spec.js. And we see, hey, it's running that test, right, just for that file. And this time we see, hey, it's only showing the report just for that one test we wrote. And that's important because sometimes you want to have better modular tests, right? So now we have a clear, succinct test, and we do see, again, hey, our test did run successfully on Chromium and Firefox, right? And that is important, and we can see, hey, that is the behavior. And then when we go to our site, because that's the whole point, we want to make sure, hey, this does work correctly. And if we go to our site, we see, hey, if we click the button twice, the value is 2, right? And we see that, and our test verified that and validated that state. So that's important. And we do see that. Alrighty. So if we go back to our test and come here to our basic.spec, I do want to show again, because for this test, I didn't actually show the validate login flow. I didn't actually show, hey, how does the actual HTML see? So we filled the username field with admin and then password, and the login status show login successful. And our test validated that. So let's see that in the actual HTML page. So we're gonna go here and we're basically just gonna fill it up with admin and password. So we go admin, password, right? We go to admin, and then password. We say, hey, login successful, right? So the state was correct, and it worked. But I do want to show you, hey, what if these tests fail? What happens? What's the difference? So I'm gonna go ahead and Control C this, and I'm going to show you, hey, what happens if the test fails. So for this time, I'm going to go to the HTML structure, right? and I'm going to change the actual HTML so you can see the difference. So for this counter, I'm going to start the counter at 1. Right, the counter is going to be 1. Right, and this is an error in our code. And this is, at the end of the day, this is what we're trying to test and be able to correct. Right, errors in our code. Right, so by the counter being at 1, we're at a boundary. Right, and once we increase the counter, it's going to be 1 above what it's supposed to be. And now you're going to see, hey, our test doesn't perform correctly, right? Because our tester is going to expect this to be 2, right? We expect if we click the button, right, logically twice, it should have 2. But we see in our JavaScript, the counter started at 1, so our counter would be 3. So I'm going to go ahead and run this test again, and I'm going to show you, hey, how Playwright can show you, hey, you have an error in your code, right? Because the expected behavior is not correct. So we're going to go ahead and run that test, and you're going to go ahead and see that. You see, hey, these tests have failed. These tests are incorrect. We expected 2, right? And our expect page locator counter value to have 2, we expected it to have 2. But it has 3, right? Playwright received 3 instead of 2, right? So we have an error. And at the end of the day, that's what you're really trying to get rid of with these tests. You're trying to see, hey, the expected behavior that the test defines is not met with the actual code that we've written. So if we go back to the JavaScript and make this 0, as it should be, and correct that error, you rerun your test again and you'll see, hey, our test will work, right? So we're going to go ahead and Control C, get rid of that. We're going to go to the Control C that. We're going to rerun the test again. You're going to see, hey, it does work. Right, that's the main goal of these tests. You want to correct your errors in your actual code, right? Correct your logic, and we see, hey, the counter increments has ran successfully, and that's the goal of that. So we can go ahead and close these Playwright windows, and we see, hey, right, our login form worked, our counter button worked, right? And that's very essential. So now this time I'm going to test the iframe spec.js. Right, I'm going to test the iframe, right? This iframe in the HTML. We're going to go ahead and test this. So I'm going to go ahead and write another test. In this test, I'm going to again create another folder, another file, and we're going to name this iframe.spec.js. Right, we're going to go ahead and name it that. We're going to first, as always, in every testing file, you're going to need to import, expect, and test from Playwright. And this time, we're going to go ahead and test that interacts inside an iframe. All right. We're going to go ahead and put in our async function. You might be like, okay, this is getting a little repetitive, but again, this is how it be. We're going to go ahead and await page.goto. Again, I'm going to go ahead into our counter spec and go ahead and copy the URL that we're testing. We're going to go ahead and do that. And we're going to say, hey, const frame equal page.locator page.frame locator, which is going to locate that iframe. And we're going to locate it with the test frame. And we're going to say await iframe dot locator inside input, and we're going to fill it with hello inside iframe. Cool. And you do see we have some errors. It's essentially because our async function, we have it like this. So essentially all we're going to have to do is add a parentheses right here, right? So we could do that, or async parenthesis with our page. There. Test interacts with iframe. Go ahead and copy this. See why we have an error. Since we're writing our test run to interacts inside an iframe async function with our page. We're structuring our page like we normally do. It seems we just have a missing parentheses right there. So make sure you write your test correctly. Get rid of those errors. But you do see, hey, most of these tests have the same logic. Right, and these tests were essentially doing the same thing. And all these tests were essentially doing the same thing. We're going to, hey, import our required functions. We're going to create a test with the description of the test, and we're going to run an async function that takes in a page object that Playwright's going to create when it goes to this page, essentially just parsing the HTML page. And it's basically going to allow us to access those elements and simulate actions, right? Page frame locator. We're going to locate those elements in the actual HTML. And then we're going to test the state and make sure it's in the correct state that it should be in. Again, make that lowercase because that's what we're going to be testing. Get the ID of that. All right, and you're gonna say hello inside iframe. So Playwright's frame locator essentially handles a simple no switching context, right? So we don't have to manually switch the context like you do in like other frameworks like Selenium, for example. But again, we can go ahead and run that test just so you can see if the test runs successfully. So again, in all tests, we're going to run npx playwright test, and then we're going to go to the testing folder, and we're going to run iframe.spec.js. And we see, hey, that test did run successfully, right? As always, the test runs successfully. And you can always see that report and go through the report and make sure, hey, if something does go wrong, you can see why it did go wrong. So I highly recommend going through this report. There's other things you can do in there. You can see skip, the test you skip. Some of these things are a little bit more advanced if you want to provide networking functions, etc. Alrighty. Going back to the HTML, and just so you guys can be clear what I was saying, when we were selecting those elements, right, with that hashtag, like in our test, when we were selecting the elements with these hashtags and filling the elements, that's essentially an ID in the actual HTML. So when we go to the HTML, we're selecting, hey, right, these IDs, right, when we incremented that counter button, that ID that we were selecting basically was mapping to this, right, to this button in the actual HTML DOM structure. So when we went to that DOM element, we were able to get that and increment the value using JavaScript. Alrighty. So with that being said, I think you guys got a good understanding of how to basic testing. If ever in doubt, you can always go to the testing documentation for Playwright. It has some more advanced stuff than we covered today since we just didn't have enough time to cover everything. But it has things like emulation, fixtures. Fixtures are going to be pretty common that you're going to use to provide a proper testing environment. Another thing that I highly recommend you to use is, where is it at? Let's see where it's at. But essentially, mocking. Mocking is another important thing you're going to be wanting to do in your API test when you go to networking and making network requests across the server, because a lot of times you're going to want to mock those requests and not actually hit the end server, right? Because you don't want to waste those resources for a test. So you can mock, right, the actual end behavior of those servers, right? So you don't actually have to make a real request. So that's something I highly recommend looking into if you're have a networking application. But yeah, that'll be in this networking tab. Like I said, this documentation is pretty. It's not too hard to understand, right? They have very good documentation. Again, we covered the basics, but I feel like with these basics, it won't be hard to extend that knowledge to more complex projects. Okay, with that being said, we're going to go ahead and move on to the next stage of the video.
Yeah, test this. So we can see the npx playwright report from here. npx playwright show report. So it will go automatically to the report card. The test is running smoothly, no errors. And for cd part, we need to add another flow in here, which is new pile, and we will name this deploy yml ysl, my bad. Rename it deploy ysl. Okay, so on the deploy part, we'll start with the name, our name, play right test on push and branches. It's basically the same as the playwright YML, but the concept is different from it. And we put main master, and we're going to pull request. Oh, here's pull request, and there are branches. Main master. Okay, and our jobs test. RB60. No. So this is not Playwright YML, so we need to clear these ones. Instead of these ones, we need to add the deployment status. Deployment status job test 60 minutes and runs on Ubuntu latest. And if GitHub and deploy success. If then steps will be uses actions check out w5 and uses w5 and with Node version LTS install says run npm ci name is right run npx right install. So this part is how we run the CI on the terminal. We need to set it up and name run playwright tests npx write test and env the reason why we were writing GitHub is we're using the GitHub actions. Deployment status target URL. So here's our deploy YSL code. We need to save it and Playwright. So now we need to run it. So on a deploy, we need to run the npm ci. So it runs fine, and then we will go to npx playwright install with deps. Yeah, there's no problem with that. And then lastly we will go npx playwright test. So here's, and also we can again see our report, and show report, and it will go automatically go to report. And going back to our PowerPoint slide, and key takeaways from CI and CD is CI and CD integrates the development, testing, and deployment into seamless automated pipelines, and frequent small code changes are easier to test and debug and release than large infrequent merges. And it also automation reduces human errors to accelerates feedback loops. And CI and CD is not just about the speed, it is about consistency, reliability, and scalability. And advantages are faster releases, higher quality, reduced risk, improved collaboration and scalability, and which is pipelines can grow in with larger teams and projects. And limitation is setup complexity, which is initial pipeline design and tool integration can be challenging. And there are other limitations and security risk, culture shift, test reliability, and infrastructure costs. Yeah, that's all for. And if you looking for more example about the CI integration and more about it, and you can just go to playwright.com and see continuous integrations. And here's the introduction and the workers and CI configurations, which is our playwright YML code in here. And you can see a lot of information from here. And if you're using the Linux agents, and you can use here, the steps can help you to understand more and more about what is CI and CD it is. And thank you for your attention. I hope you liked our video, and goodbye.